Okay, Molly will be adding the picture in a little bit. Church of the Cross is asking for members to volunteer and create a blessing message using Matthew chapter 5 as a guide for Lent. And my choice for a blessing today is, "Blessed are the meek, they shall inherit the earth." Now, Molly will be adding the picture now. This Tuesday's message is planned as the third of 8 messages leading up to Easter. And I chose meekness as my blessing due to something that happened to me in the 3rd grade of grade school. The grade school picture that you see is Mayfield, District 63, Clay County, Kansas. That school is no longer in place. It's been retired. One-room country grade schools are a thing of the past. The resource book that I used was The Way of Blessedness that's being used by the church members. And meekness is not always looked upon as an admirable trait, something that you can be proud of. But now I recognize that connection is not correct. And in this story that I'm going to relate to you about my 3rd grade experience, where meekness came into play, is used as an example of how meekness can be a good thing and a bad thing. I'm going to use my story as an illustration of how meekness comes to play. And there are a lot of older boys in school. I think our school attendance that year, my 3rd grade, was about 16 total kids, and over half of them were upper class, maybe fifth grade and higher boys. So there was quite a group of older boys, a few younger boys, and only a few girls in the school. One of the boys, a year or two younger than me, I remember as Bobby. I may have his name confused, but Bobby was more or less the star of this story. He played the starring role. Bobby was at least 1 year younger, maybe 2, but he was big for his size. He was taller than I was at the 3rd grade, and he was either in the 1st or the 2nd grade. What was going on during this time, during recess one day, the older boys decided that they wanted to have Bobby and me fight, and they were betting on Bobby. Most of the big boys, particularly his brothers, he had 3 brothers, as I recall, and they were making sure that he could hold his own in a fight. They were teaching him how to box and so on. And I was watching. I was not a real willing participant. I told them I really didn't want to fight, and they called me a name. It wasn't meek, but it was a synonym for meek. Maybe it was a sissy, I'm not sure. But anyway, that influenced me during the early part of this story. And as I watched during the recess periods for almost a week while they were teaching, the older boys were teaching Bobby, the intricacies of boxing and how to throw a punch. And I tried to avoid their discussions and their get-togethers. Bobby seemed to be willing to do the training, but later on I found out that he was not so willing. Finally, the day came when the older boys made a circle around Bobby and I, and they more or less had us cornered, and they said, "Now, let's have a fight." This was not my idea of fun, but the older boys called it entertainment. I didn't want to fight, but I didn't like being called meek, or that synonym that they used. Bobby didn't seem to be any more willing to fight than I was, but nevertheless, we were together. Finally, I made a mistake. I threw the first punch, and guess what happened? Bobby started crying, and I felt really bad. Realized that I had been enticed or goaded into a situation that I should never have agreed to. So I promptly gave Bobby a hug. We told each other we didn't really want to fight, and the crowd was really disappointed. They missed out on their fight. About that time, the recess bell rang for all the students to go back inside, and everybody rushed inside. The last thing they wanted was for the teacher to find out what was going on out there, and then everybody would have to spend some time after school doing some extra homework. Well, anyway, Bobby and I became good friends after that time. And I suppose the real meat of this story comes when maybe a day or two later, one of the older boys that had taken a part in this charade and I met on the school ground, just happened to be walking by each other, and he stopped, and he had kind of a scowl on his face, so I decided I better stop too. He's got something on his mind. And what he said was, Bobby was younger than I was, and I really shouldn't have started the fight with him. Well, I had a hair on the back of my head when I heard this. When I heard him say I was a bully and I started to fight, I had a hair on the back of my head that stood straight up because I didn't think that was a fair assessment of what really happened. So, maybe it was a soft, quiet voice that I heard, or a touch in my imagination, but it seemed like someone was telling me, be careful what you say, be careful what you do, because this boy is a lot bigger than you are. Don't get him too upset. So, I looked up at him, and he was a pretty tall boy. And I said, no, I'm not the bully. You and others encouraged Bobby. You enticed us to have a fight. So if there's a bully in the school, it's all of you big guys. And the blessing of meekness really goes to Bobby, because he resisted the temptation of even engaging in the fight. And as soon as I recognized it, I stopped too. But it was time for me to understand what the term meek really meant when I looked up at this boy and gave him my opinion. So meekness can be two things. It can be being quiet and reserved and not antagonistic to others. But it also can mean saying something that is true and relevant and is the truth about the situation. The older boy evidently just didn't realize who the bullies were, and sometimes when you're meek, you have to stand up for what is right. So that was a story that when I saw the opportunities of the 8 weeks of blessings, I picked that one because immediately this story came to my mind, and I couldn't put it aside. So I hope that chapter 5 of Matthew will be a good read for you, and in particularly as you look at the blessing, blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Thank you for the opportunity to give this lesson today. Bye-bye.